Remember, it was always one phone call. Always. So whenever people say, oh, what are you talking about? Like, America doesn't have that kind of motion here. Israel's a sovereign nation. No, it's not. It was always one singular phone call. And in terms of like foreign policy, this is the closest you can get to one singular phone call to end something, okay? Damning indictment of the last administration from one of Israel's back channel negotiators who says this same agreement was on the table a year ago, but Biden and his advisors wouldn't take it. I hate to be vindicated every day, okay? I hate to be vindicated every day, but once again, you know, everyone can suck my dick. Damning indictment of the last administration from one of Israel's back channel negotiators who says this same agreement was on the table a year ago, but Biden and his advisors wouldn't take it. This is from Times of Israel, okay? Reported from Branko Marcetic, writer for Jacobin. But this is reporting coming from Times of Israel. What we should also know is that this deal could have been done a long time ago. As I've said over and over again, by the way, Hamas agreed to all the same terms in September 2024 as outlined in the 3 weeks deal that I had received in both written and voice messages in Arabic and English. But at that point, the Israeli negotiators responded that the prime minister did not agree to end the war, even though the 3-week deal proposal landed on the desk of President Biden. His person in charge, Brett McGurk, refused to stray from the bad deal that he was negotiating. Work in the back channel. I met with members of the American negotiating team in October 2024, and they were as frustrated as I was with their inability to convince Biden and Biden's people to look seriously at the deal on the table. The Qataris invited me to Doha in October 2024, and I presented to them the deal that Hamas agreed to, which they were fully aware of, but they said that without the American adoption of the plan, nothing could be done because the obstacle was Israel, not Hamas. That is the same message I received from the Egyptian intelligence. Hamas was ready for a deal to release all the hostages, not to govern Gaza any longer, and an end to the war, but Israel was not prepared to go ahead. Trump doesn't get off easy either. As Baskin says, he could have forced Netanyahu to take a deal at any point in the last 9 months. Once again, double vindication. As I told you, this would have been very different. My outlook on Donald Trump would have been very different. This is what I was talking to with Bradley Martin. This is what I was talking to Bradley Martin about, where it was like Trump is not actually interested. Wait, are we trusting Times of Israel now? Wait, what are you talking about? You have to look at what their biases are. This is one of the Israeli negotiators. And yes, the Israeli negotiators, as we've seen with like Daniel Levy, for example, are absolutely more honest about the terms and conditions. They're absolutely more honest about the terms and conditions that are being reported on. I cover Israeli news more than I cover Western media when it comes to issues that pertain to Israel and issues that pertain to Gaza. They don't have to do the propaganda that like the New York Times has to do, for example, which is precisely the reason why they can be more honest about all of these shortcomings, or who's truly responsible for an inability to who's truly responsible for like setting up new hurdles. On September 19th in the late evening, Witkoff called me and said, we have a plan. We had a long conversation. I supported what the Americans were planning, and I made few suggestions on how to get Hamas on board. I was asked to convince the Hamas leadership that Trump was serious and wanted the war to end. Throughout the last months, I have been in contact with 8 members of the Hamas leadership outside of Gaza. 3 of them engaged with me in discussions. I did not make suggestions regarding the Israeli side because for over a year, I believe that if President Trump decides the war has to end, Trump will force Netanyahu into the agreement. That is exactly what happened. Remember, it was always one phone call. Always. So whenever people say, oh, what are you talking about? Like, America doesn't have that kind of motion here. Israel's a sovereign nation. No, it's not. It was always one singular phone call. This is one of the closest you can get. And in terms of like foreign policy, this is the closest you can get to one singular phone call to end something, okay? Obviously, you can't do that with Russia. Russia's a foreign adversary. They have their own ambitions. Russia is not attached to the hip to unlimited support. Russia doesn't actually get to do whatever it's doing with unlimited support from the United States of America in the same way that Israel does. That is precisely the reason why it took one phone call. This is also very important. Hassan, do you think Kamala would have won if Biden took the deal? Oh my God. I'm not even kidding. If Joe Biden did not spend every waking moment dreaming about murdering more children in Gaza and didn't like let his ultra Zionist advisors basically run the show at the behest of Israel and they did stop Israel at any point, they would have won unimaginable amounts of favor. Unimaginable amounts of favor. They could have made it seem as though it was Kamala's pressure, for example, that convinced Biden to finally put an end to the genocide. Okay? Absolutely. Think about how many people would have celebrated, even if they had like a real convincing ceasefire, even if they had an extended ceasefire, the one that Donald Trump, when he came into office, pushed Israel to engage with. Even if the Democrats did something of that sort, at least leading up to the election, they probably would have eaten good off of that. Okay? Any sort of gesture in the affirmative, any sort of gesture in a positive direction against what any sort of gesture in the positive direction would have won a tremendous amount of favor, for the Democrats. I know this deal was available during Biden's admin, but is this article just working to glaze Trump a bit, massaging his image for the Peace Prize? I think that there is obviously some glaze taking place here with respect to. Wait, hold on. There is obviously some glaze taking place here with respect to like Donald Trump actually pushing, but I suspect that there is a reason for it, and that is because Donald Trump is actually pushing, it seems, so far. But once again, I don't know. I don't know if this is a real. I don't know if there's real assurances here. I don't know. Control of NSO is leaving Israeli hands and is expected to pass the Hollywood producer and financier Robert Simmons. The massive deal that would turn over the world's most prolific zero-click spyware to American ownership still has to be approved by the Israeli Defense Ministry. This is very grim when you consider the previous scandals regarding NSO, including the fact that Pegasus ostensibly cannot operate on American phone numbers, which is why the FBI experimented with their own version. This would presumably change that paradigm. NSO is the world's most successful cyber company, for those of you who don't know, responsible for the proliferation of their sophisticated spyware throughout the globe. They work on behalf of Israel to coerce third world governments into guaranteeing their votes at the United Nations in exchange for their tech. It is perhaps the most prolific spyware that exists out there. Pegasus allegedly was utilized by allegedly Mohammed bin Salman against Jeff Bezos. If you recall, there's a reason why Jeff Bezos no longer is married to his wife, because there were some leaks off of his phone. There were some leaks that came from his phone at the time that showed that he was actually rizzing up ladies, and then that led to their relationship falling apart. And anyway, this is used by the Indian government to spy and arrest every anti-government journalist. Yeah, Jeff Bezos basically had to hire the most comprehensive private security apparatus that existed on the planet at the time to force every journalist to stop them from covering the story about the MBS leaks. That's how they packed that shit up. And because he's a billionaire, he gets to do that. You're kind of selling it by saying it catches cheaters. I mean, it was Mohammed bin Salman using it against Jeff Bezos after there was after their relationship soured because of Jamal Khashoggi being chopped up and assassinated and had a bone saw used on him in the Istanbul consulate. Why are you using the word Riz? You are 62, sir. Listen. Even us old guys should be able to use the word Riz sometimes, okay? Let an old man have a little bit of fun. But in any case, these are, even with all of the endless tools, understand, even with all of the capabilities that Israel has and Israel advocacy groups have on U.S. soil in all around the Western world, they still were incapable of overcoming the sea of negative coverage due to their grand ambition being so violent. Okay? Their ambition here was genocide. And it turns out, even with the limited amount of information that you could get from social media from Palestinians directly, that was enough for people to go, this is horrifying. I don't with this at all. I don't like this at all. We need to put a stop to this. That paired up with the incredible audacity, the arrogance, the sheer entitlement that you heard, that you saw with your own two eyes, with your own two ears from every Israeli envoy, made this unavoidable, made this reality unavoidable. And here we are, Holy Toledo. For the first time in American history, voters sympathize more with Palestinians than they do with Israelis, which is crazy. It kind of shows how insanely twisted the American public is in general. This is a story that is both good and bad. It's good because in spite of the unlimited media propaganda apparatus that consistently contextualized every single thing that Israel was doing as something that they had to do. You know, every dead child was contextualized in real time by an Israeli occupational force rear admiral or whatever, right? In spite of that, in spite of the faucet of misinformation, the faucet of propaganda, Americans still recognize the truth. Americans still slowly but surely saw the truth. So that's one thing. That's the good part about this. But the bad part about this, of course, is that it's still a +1 sympathy. It's still a +1 sympathy for Palestinians after 2 years of Palestinians experiencing genocide. That means there's still a long way to go. Americans are some of the most propagandized people on the planet, straight up.
Yeah, this war caused a historic shift in public opinion on how Americans view the Middle East conflict. What are we talking about here? Who voters sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Back in October of 2023, it was the Israelis by 48 points. Look at this shift. Now we're talking about the Palestinians by a point. I looked back at every single poll that I could possibly find since this question was first asked in the 1980s. This is the first time ever in which the Palestinians had any sort of lead on this particular question. It is very clear that this war caused a historic shift away from the Israeli position in the middle.
Like even now, when Mr. Holy Toledo himself says this war, that's propaganda. He might not even be aware that he's engaging in propaganda, but that is propaganda. The United Nations has openly declared this to be a genocide. Okay? That means that this liberal news outlet is actually outflanking the United Nations in terms of doing pro-Israel propaganda, calling this, after the United Nations called it a genocide, still calling it a war is propaganda. Now, sometimes Palestinians call it a war. Sometimes I even call it a war, right? But if you're not actually, if you have never at any point called this a genocide and you just have only called it a war, then it's propaganda. It's that simple, okay? And also, here are the results for that. I am going to give you a media confidence metric. This is directly what I talked about on that panel that I participated in the other day. In 2 years, since October 7, agenda-setting Sunday shows, CNN's State of the Union, NBC's Meet the Press, and ABC's This Week have not featured a single Palestinian guest. I wrote about how the U.S. media shuts out Palestinians while musing about the particulars of the genocide. And the only time they ever had someone who's ostensibly Palestinian was Jake Tapper having Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib on, and he works for the Atlantic Council. He works for the Atlantic Council, and he works literally as a part of the think tank apparatus of one of the two belligerents. America is a belligerent in this. Okay, America is a participant in this genocide. It is ridiculous. Does anyone have that media confidence report that I saw the other day? Like people's confidence diminishing in media since like nosediving since like the war in Iraq, the war on terror. Because I saw like trust in media is at an all-time low at 28% in the United States of America. Republicans' confidence in mass media report to news fully, accurately, and fairly now at 8%. Okay? And I want to show you this. Americans trusted mass media from 1972 to 2025. Okay. There are a lot of complex reasons for this. Okay. There are some justifiable reasons for diminishing confidence in mainstream news. Okay. But there are also absolutely ridiculous reasons for why Americans have diminished confidence in mainstream news, like during COVID, for example. COVID was a major blow to media, and you can see it. You can see it happening in real time here. When you see a huge dip from 2019 all the way down to 2024. Part of that is the explosion of social media news. Okay? The explosion of social media news. But overall, a big part of the reason why people that say a great deal, a fair amount, okay, the reason why that has dipped to 28% is, if you noticed, post 2001, there are some significant dips here, okay? I've said this before, but I think the Iraq War and the illegal nature of the Iraq War and the justifications for the Iraq War from mainstream outlets shred their credibility in the eyes of a lot of Americans. Okay? Iraq War was a huge blow. People had a lot of questions post 9/11. Not a lot of those questions were left addressed. There was a lot of conspiracy theories floating around that created some instability for mainstream news and mainstream resources. But think about it. Like, we went from in 1999 at 55% to in 2000 to 51%, all the way down to now 28%. There were certainly good reasons in this process. I think being skeptical of mainstream resources when they openly lie to the public, like with the Iraq War, that plays a role in this, right? That makes people lose confidence in mainstream resources. And I think, and this is something that I warned about quite a bit, the reason why this skyrocketed back in the first Trump administration was because they were very critical of Donald Trump. Okay? They were unimaginably critical of Donald Trump. They kept heavily scrutinizing Donald Trump every day. So they recovered from 32% all the way back up to 45% by 2018. But then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, that's when things took a nosedive turn. Okay? Obviously, a big part of the story is access to the internet and the internet access becoming way broader. Access to the internet becoming a more significant aspect of news consumption. Because, I would say that even in this era, from 2000 all the way to 2013, 2014, you didn't actually have, you had the blogosphere, you had Air America, you had some critical voices. Having said that, however, it wasn't people didn't actually get most of their news consumption from resources that were outside of mainstream and legacy publishers, right? I don't buy the Iraq angle on media distrust. Media in America knows Bush admin lied about Iraq, but they're not really aware of the media's role in selling it. I think that played a big role. I think that it's conspiracy theories and the Iraq war in general, people's questions about 9/11 being left unaddressed, and also the media's advocacy, consistent advocacy for the Iraq war certainly played a role. I think that people, when they say we've been lied to, the Iraq war was a lie, we've been lied to about the war on terror, they also are talking about mainstream resources, mainstream news. Straight up. There is a reason why Jon Stewart blew the up in this time period. I mean, I'm going to chalk this up to me being a massive loser who was super invested in American news even back then. But I still recall Jon Stewart being one of the only voices that was critical of both the Democrats and the Republicans, and also openly critical of the Iraq war and the war on terror. That was the peak of the Daily Show. So if a lot of people were tuning into Comedy Central and there were articles being written about why is a comedian the voice of change in news? Why is it up to a comedian to actually be the only trusted resource in mainstream news? When all those articles were written, that means that people were not trusting mainstream media. But I think ultimately, a big part of the diminished confidence comes from COVID. During COVID, independent media exploded in popularity, and there were a lot of grifters who basically took advantage of the information vacuum that existed in this novel virus that was ripping people apart, just murdering people, that ended up killing more than 1 million Americans, right? And all the lockdowns and all the restrictions that frustrated a lot of Americans as well. Like independent resources, independent media basically blew the up in that time frame, partially because we were locked in to our phones and to our computers. That's when, in 2020, people like myself also blew up and became voices comparable to mainstream resources. But basically, I think it's a combination of people refusing to listen to mainstream resources when they were trying to actively abide by and actively push for whatever the epidemiologists were saying at the time, and obviously that leaned on the side of caution, leaned on the side of restrictions, leaned on the side of like pushing for lockdowns and whatnot. And a lot of people wanted news resources to confirm their biases. So they sought out alternatives. And a lot of those alternatives were really bad. So this is the part of the media confidence that I talk about when I say like the media was doing the appropriate thing. This is supposed to do. Mainstream media, mainstream resources were doing the appropriate thing and pushing for the best possible measures, no matter how restrictive those measures were, right? In an effort to save people's lives. And that frustrated a lot of people, and that confidence took a nosedive again. And then I think the final blow came from the coverage of Gaza. That's it. The Gaza coverage played a massive role, I think, in this nosedive, because people saw so much death and destruction on their social media. They saw so many murdered children on their social media. And yet, when they tuned into like Jake Tapper, CNN, when they tuned into MSNBC, when they read headlines on the New York Times, they couldn't believe it. Like the juxtaposition of what they saw on social media directly being reported by Palestinians versus what they were hearing from mainstream resources, I think deeply heightened this fissure. And for people saying like Yasha Levine was talking about saying it would be interesting if MAGA abandons Israel before liberals do law, but this is wrong. Liberals have already abandoned support for Israel. Support for Israel's military action in Gaza by party identification shows all the way back in July, Democrats at 8%. 8% of Democrats approve Israel's military action in Gaza. 8%. Okay, Israel's trying to hold on to the 71% like it's their lifeline. Okay? But Democrats have already gone, and so have the independents, really. This is why I say it's Israel o'clock. It's been Israel o'clock. And the more the media actually frames it in a truthful manner, the more other people will also get on board with Israel o'clock. And that will still continue to heighten the contradictions. And it will probably embed deep mistrust in mainstream resources if they don't follow through on the way people are feeling about this and cover this crisis in the moral clarity that it deserves. Okay.
Middle East conflict and towards the Palestinians when it comes to who Americans and voters sympathize with. This, of course, was led by Democrats, because what are we talking about? We went from Democrats favoring the Israelis by 26 points to the Palestinians by 46 points. That is a shift, John, quick math in my head, of over 70 percentage points. But overall, the first time ever in which more Americans sympathize with the Palestinians over the Israelis. Truly a historic shift.
It's a big shift overall, a big shift within the Democratic Party. What about Republicans?
Yeah, it's not just Democrats, though, in which we have seen a real shift of opinion. Even within the Republican ranks, this war has caused real division. What are we talking about? Well, we often talk about by age within the Democratic Party, but what about...
I swear you're paid by the RNC the way you disproportionately attack liberals in America. At least I hope you're getting paid because you're just a useful idiot. If not, you took all the good streams, says my friend. I call balls and strikes. This week is probably the worst time that you could say this about someone like myself because I've even glazed Hakeem Jeffries, which is something that I never thought I would ever say. So you're absolutely wrong. When the Democrats actually do right by their constituents, like, for example, pushing for a shutdown and really centering the conversation around the Republicans taking away people's subsidies for healthcare, I'm on board. I'm invested. I'm honest. If you see me criticizing the Democrats, let me remind you, it's probably because they're doing something worthy of criticism.
Out by age within the Republican ranks, who Republicans sympathize more with. You see a massive, huge age divide. Those 50 and over, what we see amongst Republicans is they sympathize more with the Israelis by 66 points. But look at the voters under the age of 50. They do sympathize with the Israelis, but just by 25 points. We're talking about a 40-point difference, with the youngest Republicans being far more sympathetic to the Palestinian position than older Republicans are.
That's a huge gap right there. Let's just say that.
That is a huge gap, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Republican Party adjusts going forward.
All right, the news of the ceasefire deal, the possible return of all Israeli hostages, what's likely to be the reaction to that?
Yeah, I think Americans are really going to like it. And why do I say that? Because just look at the polling. A permanent Israeli-Hamas ceasefire, that is negotiating one. Highly important. That is extremely or very important. 51% of Americans. And then you see somewhat important, 31%. Over 80.
The new Hasbara talking point is that the pro-Palestinian movement delayed the ceasefire for a year. Oh, cool. Yeah. It was all of the sympathetic voices that were actually getting more Americans on board with Israel's cruelty that made Israel, that forced Israel's hand to being even more cruel to the Palestinians. Classic. A new Isaac Chodener has hit the timeline. Why Hamas agreed to release the hostages and why it might not matter much for Gaza's future or for Palestinian statehood. Who is this interview with? An interview by Isaac Chodener for who? Bro, why are your haters so hungry? Like, damn, I've never seen you talk about any of the guys that make daily videos about you. There is a concerted effort in trying to undermine what I do and what I seek to do, and they will stop at nothing. And it's also beneficial. People make money off of it. It is what it is. You just gotta keep pushing. You just have to keep putting your head down and doing what you've been doing. There's not really much else you can do. Wait, is this even an interview? Who is this Q&A with? I don't understand. Late night, I spoke with the phone with Khalid El-Gindi, visiting scholar at Georgetown University Center for Contemporary Arab Studies, an expert on the Middle East, but the contours of the deal and what will come next. El-Gindi is also the author of the book Blind Spot, America and the Palestinians, From Balfour to Trump. Yeah, the new Hasbara talking point was the silence from the ceasefire now crowd is deafening. That's what they're saying, which is crazy because, like, while there are people who have, like, I've seen some people talk about how, like, oh, this is the end of the resistance, like, how dare they, or some shit. I'm not one of those people, and many people are not those people at all. Like, many in the pro-Palestinian crowd have obviously been excited, elated at the prospect. Like, how can you not feel a sense of joy when you see Palestinians out in the streets celebrating what they perceive to be a permanent end to this genocide, right? I'm obviously still skeptical about whether or not this ceasefire will hold. Having said that, however, of course I'm going to celebrate the ceasefire. I don't understand why these guys are trying to push this notion that, like, people who have been demanding a ceasefire are actually now saying, "Oh no, we wanted this to continue. We wanted the genocide to continue." It's ridiculous, and I think it just, like, showcases how cynical they are. Notice the near identical wording, bots. No, these are people who behave like bots. Israel does have a deep well of finances to apply in this direction. And it is very clear it is very clear that they are, I mean, they're doing a horrible job at it, but they're still trying. Some telling Israeli analysis that makes it clear that they don't see this as much of a ceasefire, but rather a tactical pause through which to secure the release of hostages before retaining control of most of Gaza and implementing the Lebanon model of continued bombings. This is from Amit Segal saying, my initial thoughts on the deal, there's no phase 2. That's clear to everyone, right? Phase 2 might happen someday, but it's unrelated to what has just been signed. The deal signed now is a hostage release deal. It doesn't imply anything about the future. Theoretically, fantasies can come true. Emiratis and allies dismantling tunnels, an international body formed, Tony Blair governing Gaza. All this could happen in theory, but it's not a part of the current tactical negotiations. What we have now is a hostage deal and a ceasefire while talks continue in good faith. There's the question, of course, who decides if talks are happening in good faith? Under Trump, Israel has previously said talks aren't genuine or productive and resumed fighting. But this time, I don't think we'll see IDF tanks rushing back into Gaza like what happened when the last 2 ceasefires ended. The big question is, are we moving towards the Lebanese model Israel mentioned? In other words, the IDF stays beyond the international border and strikes targets from the air when it detects buildups or threats. This is Netanyahu's mouthpiece irrelevant? No. I think that's precisely the reason why he is relevant. Yes. No, that is why this is more relevant in understanding what like Netanyahu's position, understanding what like the next steps that Netanyahu might take. Okay? Attempts to harm Israel are obvious, but what we're talking about is buildup efforts like digging more tunnels or building more arms producing lathes. This is what Israel is aiming for. The reasonable assumption in Jerusalem is that President Trump will approve it. That's one point. The IDF will withdraw to the 53% line. It was 57% initially and dropped to 53% when the hostages will be freed. The talks afterward are based on the principle of Israeli withdrawal in return for demilitarization and dismantling. Of course, we all assume that Hamas won't disarm willingly, and the Emiratis and the other international forces won't achieve this quickly either. Now, regarding the hostage issue, remember when I talked about this, by the way? I brought this up yesterday. There will be 2 things that Israel could use potentially to not abide by a full-blown withdrawal or not abide by a permanent ceasefire. And those 2 things are, number 1, disarmament, complete disarmament. They'll say, oh, they haven't done a complete disarmament. And number 2, they'll claim that Hamas is incapable of bringing all of the dead hostages that they took and recover their bodies. And those are the 2 avenues that I think Israel could potentially use to just basically continue bombing Gaza and ruin the ceasefire conditions, and then have America play ball and act as though Hamas is the real spoiler here. So that's something to consider. I do think that the same motivation for keeping the journalists out and the same motivation for not abiding by a real ceasefire initially all the way back in January still remains. And that, of course, is that if Israel allows the dust to settle and you have international human rights organizations, Western journalists flood Gaza, okay? If that were to happen, then Israel's true cruelty would be impossible to avoid. Okay, what is this? CNN and Fox News Nightmare just dropped. This guy really wants me to condemn Pakistan, and I don't know why. Condemn Pakistan, sir. Condemn Pakistan, sir. Please condemn Pakistan, sir, is what they keep saying in the chat. Oh, by the way, while I was conducting my interview with David Adler, Trump's handpicked U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan indicted another one of Trump's political enemies, this time. Also, speaking of the Pam Bondi conversation, the Wall Street Journal did actually report, that Trump was trying to message Pam Bondi privately. That weird Truth Social message that Trump sent out that looked like a DM, Yeah, and everybody was yelling at me when I said this looks like a DM. People were like, the trumpets in the chat, the maggots were like, you're so stupid, dude. Obviously, Trump would not DM someone like that. It turns out sevgili Hasan, köpeğine şoklayan bir orospu çocuğu olmak nasıl bir köpeğine şoklayan orospu çocuğu. Türkler, oğlum bu kadar salak olamazsınız değil mi? Gerçi şaşırmıyorum. Gerçekten bu kadar salaksanız inanamıyorum yani. Hani İngilizce konuşmayı pek anlamıyorsunuz belki ama ben gösterdim yani bunun doğru olmadığını. İnanılmaz. Anyway. Obama made a statement on Gaza as well. Chris Hayes, the new reporting from the Wall Street Journal tonight, that message that Trump posted to Pam Bondi online was meant to be basically a DM that he accidentally posted publicly. Pam was surprised to learn that it was public. Bondi, upset, called the White House aides. It turns out Trump is that stupid, by the way. It turns out Trump is actually that stupid.
New reporting at the Wall Street Journal tonight that message that Trump posted to Pam Bondi online was meant to be basically a DM that he accidentally posted publicly. He meant to send a private message urging her prosecution of FBI Director James Comey and his other favorite targets. We can't.
I like that people are so unrestrained with their racism. Like there was a chatter that said, speaks like a terrorist in English and speaks even more like a terrorist in Turkish. Cool, man. Speaks like a terrorist in English and sounds even more like a terrorist when speaking sand people. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. Sand people is insane, brother. It's not. It's not. Very, very, very common thing that I have been hearing a lot more, as a matter of fact, since October 7. They brought back the OG. They're trying to farm a Hassan crashes out at his chat clip. Don't fall for it. No, I'm not falling for it. I haven't been, at least. But I know. Yeah, sand people is better than the other option, which is, yeah, the N-word. Sand N-word is what I hear as well. Who signs their text messages with President DJT? Turns out, President DJT does that.
Delaying no longer, it's killing a reputation. He believed he had sent Bondi the message directly, addressing it to Pam, was surprised to learn it was public. Bondi grew upset, called the White House aides, Trump, who then agreed to send a second post praising her as doing a great job. 5 days after the Saturday evening message, Comey was indicted. It strikes me that that's materially irrelevant to the filings that Pat Fitzgerald is going to make on Comey's behalf, Joyce.
I do think it's awesome that this administration is so unimaginably incompetent that they are basically giving the courts, they're giving any kind of legal counsel, any kind of defense attorney, the biggest layups of all time, okay? Because this is so clearly biased, directional, like completely unacceptable. It's just like any defense attorney that's like remotely competent could just look at that and be like, do you see this? Look at this. The president is demanding, after firing the previous prosecutor for not finding enough indictable evidence for his political enemies, has now gotten this new attorney general to forcibly indict his political enemies. It is so clear cut. It is so transparent. Anyway, let's see what Obama had to say about Palestine now that the GOAT, Donald John Trump, actually facilitated a ceasefire that that the Biden administration never could. After 2 years of unimaginable loss and suffering for Israeli families and the people of Gaza, we should all be encouraged and relieved that an end to the conflict is within sight, that those hostages still being held will be reunited with their families, and that vital aid can start reaching those inside of Gaza whose lives have been shattered. More than that, though, it now falls on the Israelis and Palestinians with the support of the U.S. and the entire world community to begin the hard task of rebuilding Gaza and commit to a process that, by recognizing the common humanity and basic rights of both peoples, can achieve a lasting peace. Incredible stuff. Wait, what? Finnish journalist arrested after asking Finnish President Stubb about Israeli arms deals?
Is it appropriate for Finland to continue arms purchases from Israel, a country that has been accused of genocide by the UN and ICJ? You have a comment, Mr. President. No comment. That's our president, ladies and gentlemen.
I wasn't protesting. Police said I couldn't do that. What was it then? What the? Hey, yo. What the? is going on in Finland, bro? Yeah. Where is Ursula von der Leyen to be like, in Russia, you would get arrested for that while he's in the process of being arrested. Be careful. Why are you surprised this is happening everywhere? Honestly, the reason, I'm not that surprised. This is like an international issue, okay? Well, I wouldn't say it's an international issue, but it's certainly an issue in like Western liberal democracies, okay? For sure. It has gotten significantly worse. And I think not only has it gotten significantly worse, but people seemingly do not see this as a major crisis. Like a lot of people are oblivious to it. The camera got away despite being threatened with arrest. Thomas, our journalist, went to jail. He now faces a charge of disobeying the police. That is crazy. Elsewhere, journalists are already in prison or being executed. No, I mean, that happens all the time. It's completely unacceptable, but like that is ridiculous cope to say like, oh, well, at least he's not being killed. Like, do you understand that we've lost everything? Like liberalism has completely and utterly failed if you are saying that in countries where this kind of backsliding is supposed to be met with tremendous force and tremendous resistance and tremendous discontent are now basically saying, well, it is what it is. In other countries, people get shot and killed. That means it's over. Like this is a real danger. And obviously, everyone here is very familiar with the protests that have taken place in Germany, where the German police are just like beating the out of people. Like I've never seen a more Americanized police force, dude. It's pretty crazy. It makes me feel very sad and somewhat scared when I see these images. I see these images of fascism coming from, historic fascist countries. Speaking of Germany and also its endless support for fascist movements and fascist mobilization, Germany is expected to lift its arms embargo on Israel following the ceasefire agreement. Oh, thank God. Thank God. I hope that the mass mobilization of the police and mass state-mandated suppression and repression will wake more and more people up to the realities that this is completely unacceptable, that our voices must be heard, because if we don't do it now, this is the most peaceful time and the most peaceful methods of change, okay? These are the most peaceful ways that we can actually enact some sort of change and turn around before it's too late, even though sometimes I do feel like it is too late. Hakeem Jeffries released a statement on Middle East peace agreement. The peace agreement that has been reached is extremely welcome development, freeing the remaining hostages and bringing an end to years of pain, suffering, and destruction. It is my hope that phase 1 will be fully implemented, the hostages reunited with loved ones, sustained humanitarian relief surge into Gaza, Hamas completely disarmed, and the path toward a just and lasting peace in the region firmly established. The world will be a better place with a safe and secure Israel living side by side in peace and prosperity with the Palestinian people able to achieve the dignity and self-determination they deserve. We must all recommit to achieve that outcome. I mean, this seems like a blanket bot-ass statement. Obviously, not even a fraction of the criticism for Israel for conducting a genocide over the past 2 years, but that is expected. He is an AIPAC stooge. But what's actually somewhat shocking is that, like, for all intents and purposes, when Obama did have power, even though he was, obviously, as every president is expected to be, very pro-Israel, he did do a bunch of stuff that enforced American sovereignty or American decisions over what the Israelis wanted, right? That is true. Like the JCPOA is a great example of this. Israel did not want that to happen. Obama still secured it, and Israel never let that go and punished him quite a bit. But what's crazy is that now that Barack Obama is no longer the president, when he should be completely unrestrained in the way that he speaks about Israel, he's gotten seemingly worse. I know a lot of people talk about the $30 billion package that Obama gave on the way out to Israel, and that is, once again, expected. But it is crazy how little this talks about the humanity and dignity of Palestinians. Israelis have families, says Zachary Foster, but Palestinians apparently don't. Israelis are named Israelis, but Palestinians are just people. It's apparently a conflict, not an occupation, siege, or genocide. Israeli soldiers enforcing a murderous siege on Gaza are apparently hostages, not prisoners of war. Both sides being the perpetrators and victims of a genocide. You are toxic, Mr. Obama, one of the greatest disappointments of our generation. Like, this guy sat at a table with Edward Said and Rashid Khalidi, okay? That is crazy to me. That is crazy. Now let's take a look at what our Nazi government is doing.
Going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there, and we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing, an additional signing. We've already had a signing representing me, but we're going to have an official signing. And the amazing thing is all of the countries over there, from Qatar to Saudi Arabia to UAE to all of them, I mean, the rich ones, the less than rich ones, they've all come together, something which is amazing, actually. They've all come together for this, and they're really probably the best relationships they've ever had. So it's been really something incredible that nobody thought it was possible to get it done. And very importantly, the hostages are coming back. As you know, they consider them hostages. They talk about them as hostages, but there are approximately 28 dead people, mostly young, mostly men, but and boys. I mean, boys. The one woman talked about her baby. Her baby's 25 years old, but to her it's her baby, and we're bringing them home. We're getting them we're getting everything, and to those parents, the dead young man is just as important as though this person were alive. It's amazing. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've been very much involved. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Bro does not understand how human beings work.
It's really peace in the Middle East. And you remember October 7th was terrible, but also from the Hamas standpoint, they probably lost 70,000 people. That's big retribution. That's big retribution. But at some point, that whole thing has to stop, and we're going to see to it. Gaza is going to be slowly redone. You have tremendous wealth in that part of the world by certain countries, and just a small part of that, what they make will do wonders for Gaza. And I think you're going to see some tremendous countries stepping up and putting up a lot of money and taking care of things. But there's tremendous spirit like I haven't seen. And even the news, I won't call it fake news for this purpose, because they really were very fair today, I must tell you, in all cases. But they covered it very well. They covered it very fairly. Everybody loves it. Everybody. People that were never giving us a fair shake, frankly, they can't even believe it. They're so they're amazed by it. A lot of people are. But it was just everything came together. I think the attack was very important on Iran. because let's say that didn't happen, they'd probably by now have a nuclear weapon, numerous nuclear weapons, and therefore, even if we signed a deal, there'd be a big dark cloud over it, and it wouldn't be the same thing. So Iran's different, but Iran wants to work on peace now. They've informed us, and they've acknowledged that they're totally in favor of this deal. They think it's a great thing. So we appreciate that, and we'll work with Iran. As you know, we have major sanctions on Iran and lots of other things. We would like to see them be able to rebuild their country too, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. So I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey for helping us reach this incredible day.
Turkey mission, Turkey mission, Turkey mission, Turkey mission. Bro, it's never not funny that these will look at straight up passed out Kaya in the background and go, free that dog. She's sleeping, brother. She's sleeping. What do you think's going on there?
Like each other, but now it's just this moment in time. So we look forward to welcoming the hostages, like you can't believe, home to their families, and that'll take place early next week. We hope Monday or Tuesday. And all Americans should be proud of the role that our country has played in bringing this terrible conflict to an end. And I want to thank, some of the people, JD, you were fantastic, and Pete, you were great. Marco was fantastic. Some of you were very much involved. I'm looking around. So indirectly, I think almost everybody in this room was involved. Susie, I want to thank you very much. You were incredible. You've done an incredible job. So, and yes, John, what you've done was invaluable. CIA, John Ratcliffe, and he's done an incredible job. So I want to thank you all, and if I'm missing anybody, I apologize, but you've been amazing. And then you have Steve Witkoff, who worked so hard. And you remember we settled 7, this is number 8, we settled 7 wars or major conflicts, but wars. And this is number 8. And the one that I thought would be maybe the quickest of all would be Russia-Ukraine, and I think that's going to happen too. But in the meantime, they're losing about 7,000 people a week, and that seems pretty bad. They're losing mostly soldiers, young soldiers. They go out to war, and they're getting killed. And while it doesn't affect us in a lot of ways, we've got a big ocean in between, you don't want to see that happen. It was a big mistake. That war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president.
And I think what's important to understand is that yesterday what happened was really a human story. There's a geopolitical aspect to it. There's no doubt about it. It creates the condition.
The Israeli government has approved the deal. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, Hebrew account, says the government has now approved the plan of the release of all hostages, the living and the fallen.
For Gaza to one day be a normal place again, and people to have a better life, and Israelis to be safe. But yesterday was a human story. And because of the work you put in, and honestly, not only is there no other leader in the world that could have put this together, Mr. President, but frankly, I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible. Because of the actions you have taken unrelated to this, and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed. And this weekend, because of that, at some point very soon, we are going to see 20 living human beings emerge from the darkness into the light for the first time in 2 years. And that is because not only were you used the credibility and the power and the prestige of this office and the relationships you created, and you committed yourself to making it happen. And I think it will go down as a historic moment in the history of our country, and something our country should be very proud of, that we have a president that's committed to not just peace, but to the human aspect of reuniting these families.
Man of common sense. Okay, any other questions?
I'd like to comment on the workforce. Mr. President, a lot of people are calling to give you the Nobel Peace Prize after this peace deal that you managed to achieve in the Middle East. First of all, your opinion on that, and I was wondering about your trip to the Middle East, if you can tell us if you're considering to speak at the Knesset, at the Israeli parliament.
Well, they asked me to speak at the Knesset, and I've agreed to. If they would like me to, I will do it. It's the first time a president has ever done that, so that makes it very interesting, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I.
Uh-oh. Did I move weirdly? Did I move weirdly just now? I don't know. Because Kaya went back to her cot. Oh no. My hands are here. I promise. Oh my God. I saw your hand move slightly.
I will do it if they want me to. They have asked me to do that. Thank you.
Families of hostages are out in the streets in Israel dancing and crying tears of
They're all
joy.
dancing in the streets. Right now, they're dancing in the streets. They're so happy. Everybody's happy. They're dancing in the streets of Arab countries, Muslim countries. I've never seen anything like it. Everybody is happy. It's been really amazing. Thank you.
President Trump, on the international peacekeeping force that's going to deploy to Gaza soon, do you expect that Pakistan, Turkey, other countries to contribute forces? Has that become firmed up? And also on the shutdown, it seems like in the House there's a majority support for a temporary extension of the Obamacare subsidies, perhaps minus the funds for illegal immigrants. Is that how you see the deal to end the shutdown happening?
Well, I see the deal just getting extended as we continue to talk. But we're willing to pay because we're paying. You know, it's very simple. We're paying. The Democrats are the ones that caused this problem, and it's a big problem for them. And they have a lot of break in their ranks. But so I see that. You know, I think that'll get worked out. But we want to get back before we do this. We don't want to have a gun held to our head. We don't like that. And the public doesn't like it either. So we want to get back. And I think it's going to work out. I think it's going to work out very well. It's something that shouldn't have happened. This was supposed to take place before the election. You know, this was supposed to take place on September 28th before the election. We shouldn't even be talking about this right now. This is actually something that shouldn't have even happened. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, looking ahead, what guarantees Hamas disarms and that Israel doesn't resume bombing once the hostages are
the first
released?
thing we're doing is getting our hostages back, okay? And that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
But what is phase two? When does it
I'm not
begin?
going to talk about that because you sort of know what phase two is, but there will be disarming, there will be pullbacks, there will be a lot of things that are happening. You know, I gave you a whole list of 22 different things that will take place. And I think it'll take place, and I think you're going to end up with peace in the Middle East. But we have to get our hostages back.
What do you mean our hostages, bro? What are you talking about? You're the president of the United States of America. Like, there are no Americans remaining. I mean, I guess he's just embodied like the notion that Israel is the 51st state, I guess. Might as well. He's an empath. Yeah. Because, like, if you're talking about our hostages, Israel had our hostages. Israel literally had American citizens. I just interviewed one today. And these guys did not even take the initiative to release them on purpose, mind you. They were like, yeah, let God sort it out. Let Israel show you a lesson.
And we weren't going to do it at the end. We're going to do it at the beginning. We said we want them at the beginning. We're not doing it. You know, we got the hostages back. We did, as a group with Steve.
You know what? Fuck us on this community. I'll give my views and support of the clip channels. Wait, what's going on, man? Why are you so mad? This community makes me feel like I don't belong. I'm done giving my support. Are you on cannabis right now? Is that what it is? Is it the ganja speaking? He might be on the cannabis.
Steve and Jared and Marco and me and all of us, we got the hostages back. We got many of them back. Many, unfortunately, were dead. But we got many back that are now living with their families, with their parents in many cases, and with their husbands, families, wives. Many of them, they celebrate all over. They're the ones that are celebrating the loudest. They're all over. There are a lot of them that we got out. But the last 20, and I always said the last ones are going to be the most difficult, but it's been a very big deal getting the hostages out, but the rest is going to take place too.
And can you promise Palestinians they will be able to stay?
Well, they know exactly what we're doing. We're going to create something where people can live. You can't live right now in Gaza. The place is it's a horrible situation. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. So yeah, we're going to create better conditions for people. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, excuse me, what kind of security guarantees is the United States going to make for Gaza?
Well, we're going to work with very wealthy countries that love people, frankly. I know them very well. They love people, but they love Arab people, and they love Muslims, and they love, I think right now they love everybody, and they're immensely wealthy, and they're going to be involved in putting up money, and for them it's a small amount of money. For somebody else it's a large amount of money, but you know, these are the wealthiest countries in the world, and they'll be very much involved in making it as good as possible.
And what's your take now on a two-state solution, sir? Just to follow up on that. What is your view now on a
What's that? I don't know what that is. What are you? You're now just telling me there's two states? I thought there was only one state. This beautiful nation state of Israel. The beautiful nation state of Israel. There's not even an American state. Omaha, Nebraska, North Carolina, South Carolina, we should give them to Israel as well. That's the only state that I care about.
State solution for the...
I don't have a view. I'm going to go with what they agree to.
Mr. President, given that there are some tough provisions for Israel in this agreement, are you at all concerned that Bibi Netanyahu may not?
He said, I don't have a view on the two states. See, I'm telling you. He just straight up listens to the last handler. Like, this man does not retain information. Yesterday they asked him, Mr. President, like, do you want to revoke habeas corpus when dealing with these like mass deportation initiatives? And he straight up was like, no, I don't know. I don't know what that is. Who? He said, who? What's that? I want the Homeland Secretary, Kirsty Noem, to answer that question. This man is incapable of retaining information, okay? He doesn't need to retain anything when we're winning so hard, brother. That's true. I don't know habeas or corpus. I know Corpus Christi. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Continuing his post, he may be deposed.
The Bibi may go a little bit out of whack.
But he may no longer be prime minister when this is over.
Look, that's politics. It could be. I don't know. I think he's very popular right now. He's much more popular today than he was 5 days ago.
How you Americans allow this moron to be your president will always amaze me. Brother, I can't explain this to you, but just look at the internet. Look at the American internet, and you will immediately understand why I voted for this man and still like this man. His approval rating is still at like 40%. Okay? Just look at the American internet. I think people are even dumber than this. I think we could straight up have an even worse and dumber president. And also, for the Europeans tuning in, this is your future. I hope you understand that. I have been warning about this for a decade now. Like, Europeans used to make jokes when Trump was president the last time, and I was like, brother, you don't know what is about to happen. If Americans want to see their future, we can look to Israel. Okay? Israel is America's near future. Europe's near future is the United States of America. And then, of course, Israel afterwards. Every country that is in the periphery, every country that is under the banner of Western imperialism is basically accelerating towards fascism, and the stupidest version of fascism too. Like, not only is it fascist and it's violent and it's brutal, it's oppressive, it's repressive, but it's also like this incredibly childish version. And I don't know if like previous iterations, when adjusted to their timeline, were also just as childish. I don't know that. I haven't studied like fascist movements that deeply to know if like people at the time were like, yo, this Hitler guy is gay as hell, you know? Maybe they were like, bro, this Hitler guy is being so childish. What the f is this? Maybe they were saying that, you know, at the time. But like, this modern iteration of fascism is unimaginably childlike. It actually is alarming. I don't know if that version of like the OG version of fascism was also like this incompetent as well, and they just like basically strung it together somehow. Wait, what? Have you studied this in college? I did, but I mean, there's a limit to like my knowledge on the overall environment at the time and like how they reflected on Hitler in his rise to power, how they reflected on Mussolini in his rise to power as like, this cartoonish figure that was first laughed at, who consistently got in his own way. Like, was it just as petty? Because I think this is an even dumber version of fascism. Like, they're not as organized. And the things that they care about are so stupid. Every time I hear Stephen Miller or Donald Trump or any of these losers talk, I can't help but notice that in many circumstances, what they're actually complaining about is that they're just not liked. Like it's a bunch of unfuckable losers who have not let go of their deep unpopularity in high school. It feels like they're not prosecuting in a grand fascist vision. They're not prosecuting a grand fascist vision, but instead they're prosecuting unpopularity where they're just like, how dare you? How dare you not say how cool I am? I feel like if you gave these guys culture, like even for a little bit, they would just like pipe down. All they want is to be admired. All they want is to be adored. All they want is for people to both fear them and respect them at the same time, and want to demonstrate fealty, demonstrate loyalty, demonstrate reverence. That's what it feels like to me, where what they are trying to prosecute is how big of a loser they are and how they are not beloved by Hollywood and all these other cultural institutions, right? Where it's like, how dare you? I'm going to prosecute you for saying that like I'm bad. You can't say that I'm bad. I don't know where this goes, but it does feel like their vision is stunted. Their like broad fascist takeover plan is completely stunted by their immediate concerns with being liked. Nazi fascism was about control and domination. Modern Western fascism is about controlling politics so that billionaires can make more money. That's where it complicates because they still need enough people happy to drive consumerism. You act like this is new. Both Hitler and Mussolini were scorned by what you would construe as the pop culture of their day. Lamau fascists are always cringe. Their incompetence might be new, though. Yeah. I guess maybe in the way that I approach Hitler, like when I think about what he did in terms of stamping out art, like dissent in art, it always felt as though they were trying to prosecute, like I believe them when they say they think this is degenerate, right? They want a streamlined approach. They want to go back to like a different artistic vision, a different aesthetic, right? And that's the reason why they were, tackling what they consider to be Jewish art, degenerate art, right? That's what they said. Whereas like this administration, on the other hand, is basically saying, why aren't you making art that makes me look hot and cool? Like there is no, sometimes they bring up the degeneracy, but it almost feels like the express purpose for why they want to stamp out dissent in every aspect is way less organized, where it's like the only art that's readily available that you can make is AI fan cams of me, Donald Trump, and I have to look hot. Like there is not even seemingly a higher purpose as to why they're like systematically trying to target culture, like the cultural output. Please finish the thought on how it's coming to Europe. I mean, Europe is already shaken by the same exact right-wing reactionary forces. If you look at every European liberal democracy, there are very illiberal elements now that are gaining prominence, gaining momentum. Reform in the UK, AfD in Germany, the nationalists in France, Geert Wilders. Like, there are so many different figures. Maloney already is a proto-fascist or a fascist. So, like they're just basically existing within the confines of international liberal order, but It won't take much for these guys to very openly say, like, no, we're just a straightforward fascist governance now. OG fascists had an idea, at least, of what they should target. These people have no coherence in what they do. They're petulant children being enabled by oligarchs. Yeah. We're comparing the Nazis to Western politicians, not the Prussian absolutist nobles who are all highly educated. There is also, I think there's also something to be said about, like, there is a major difference with how organized the previous fascist movements were, and there was like a grand vision. I feel like these guys don't really have that, which I feel like is a good thing. But more importantly than that, there was also a very militant apparatus of counter messaging and people that were engaging in like paramilitary activities. Like the KPD was straight up popping Nazis. You know what I mean? And the Nazis and the Social Democrats sometimes and the liberals were also united against the socialists and the trade unionists and the communists, for the record, if we're talking about Germany. So like there isn't any sort of significant pushback in some ways because there is no real organized body that is actively trying to move the country in a different direction either.
Right now, maybe people shouldn't run against him. 5 days ago, it might not have been a bad idea. No, Bibi's become, this has been a very good thing. I don't think he did it for that reason, okay? But I think just looking as an analyst would look at this, I think Bibi should be very popular right now. Yeah, please.
What will happen if Hamas says that it cannot locate or was not able to find all of the deceased hostages' bodies within the time frame?
We'll have to see. I think that's going to be, it's largely been answered. We know where most of them are. Actually, the bodies are a bigger problem because some of the bodies are going to be a little bit hard to find. It's a terrible thing to discuss even, but you understand, we're all people, we're grown-ups, we understand life. Nobody can understand this stuff because this could have taken place, but we have the hostages for the most part, and so I don't think it's going to be overly big. The situation with the bodies, they say 28. Some are going to be a little bit hard to find, but we're going to do the best we can. Yeah, please.
If they don't find them within the time frame.
Please.
Thank you, sir. Regarding Jared Kushner's role in the negotiations, can you explain a little bit about why he came on at the last minute? And then in regards to the WIC program that the Vice President mentioned, do you know when the funding that you promised through the tariff revenue will actually go through to communities? Because there's reports that WIC providers are actually starting to close down today.
Well, okay, let me just answer the Jared. So Jared's a very smart guy. He did the Abraham Accords. As some people say, the Abraham, which I love the way that sounds, but he did the Abraham Accords. It was a great thing. 4 big countries joined. If I were president, if the election would have been a correct election, which it wasn't, you'd have every country in there. Maybe even Iran would have been in there, frankly. But you'd have every country in. Now, by the way, that's going to be filled up rather quickly. People want to join the Abraham Accords. And I put Jared there because he's a very smart person, and he knows the region, knows the people, knows a lot of the players, and the combination of him and Steve Witkoff and Mark.
Nationalist Sanae Takaichi is said to be Japan's prime minister. This is a global shift, not just European or American. No, Japan is also within the security umbrella of the West. So when I talk about like Western liberal capitalist nations, I absolutely consider Japan to be a part of that as well. Come on, man. We wrote their constitution. We caused irreparable harm to the Japanese collective consciousness. Countries that are under the nuclear umbrella of the West are absolutely experiencing the same shock and the move towards illiberalism, if you want to call it, post-liberalism, if you want to call it, or just like, as I like to say, reactionary fascist politics. You know? From the kennel to the tree. Oh, God. That's the only thing that I actually hate about people making jokes about like they're so very clearly grossly bringing like the Palestinian plight into this. I don't know. Like, that's not a funny joke.
Marco and Cooper, who is, as I hear, has been fantastic, and others that were involved. JD was very much involved. I mean, we had a very smart group of people working. We had a lot of different players, different countries, and very diverse countries, very different from each other. They had certain things in common, but they had a lot of things, mostly things that were not at all common to their countries. So we had a very smart group of people. These are high IQ people. Okay, I talk about how many low IQ people we have in our government. We got some real low ones, but some shockingly low. But these are very high IQ people, and that's what we want.
No, I didn't you use that as a blast off meme yesterday? No, I used a blast off meme today I think is also funny. I think the I'm zapping Kaya memes are funny. They're so stupid, even though some people genuinely believe it. I'm saying that when people also like compare it to, or people who are pro-Israel are saying, also Trump talking about high IQ people is hilarious. Well, people who are saying like, oh, I'm mistreating Kaya or abusing Kaya because I'm a Muslim and that's how Muslims are, that's gross. Or people who like make comparisons to Israel, Palestine, who are coming from like a very clear pro-Israel position. That's a little bit gross to me. Hasan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.